My name is Megan Anderson. I was 32 years old, and for 3 years I had restored historic theaters during the day and accepted weekend inspection jobs at night to save for one trip to Iceland. The night before my flight, my mother called and said, "You have to watch your sister's kids." She did not ask. She told me that my sister had an emergency and expected me to cancel my prepaid reservations. When I refused, my father took the phone. "Family comes first," he said. "Cancel the trip." I looked at the suitcase beside my door and remembered every birthday, weekend, and opportunity I had surrendered because somebody else failed to plan. "No," I answered. "Not this time." An hour later, my sister texted that I was selfish, then added, "You'll change your mind when you see them." I assumed it was another threat meant to activate my guilt. At the airport the next morning, my parents called repeatedly, but I silenced my phone and boarded beside my closest friend. For the first time, I chose a promise I had made to myself. 7 hours later, our flight landed in Reykjavik. When I turned my phone back on, I had 38 missed calls from my parents, my sister, an unknown number, and the police department back home. My sister's final message contained 4 words: "They're at your door." What she had done turned a family argument into a child welfare investigation, exposed thousands of dollars in lies, and forced my parents to decide which daughter they were finally willing to hold accountable. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you are and what the weather is like there. I want to know how far my story can travel. I stood inside Keflavik Airport staring at my phone while travelers moved around me. My friend, Tessa Monroe, saw my face and took my suitcase. I opened the security camera app connected to my townhouse in Providence. The first recording had been captured at 8:14 that morning, less than an hour after I left for the airport. A dark SUV stopped outside my house. My older sister, Brooke Anderson, stepped out with her 8-year-old son, Caleb, her 5-year-old daughter, Sophie, 2 backpacks, a grocery bag, and a thin blanket. Brooke walked them to my porch, knocked several times, and looked directly into the camera. "Your aunt is inside," she told them. "She's probably in the shower. Wait here." Caleb pointed toward my empty driveway, but Brooke was already returning to the SUV. Before leaving, she placed an envelope beneath my doormat. The next recording showed Caleb knocking again, while Sophie sat on her backpack. It was 43 degrees, and they wore light jackets. 20 minutes later, Sophie began crying. Caleb wrapped the blanket around her and tried calling someone from a small tablet, but the battery died. My neighbor eventually noticed them, checked my windows, and called the police. Watching Caleb protect his little sister felt like being punched in the chest. Brooke had not merely asked me to babysit. She had tried to make my refusal impossible by abandoning her children at my locked home after I had already left the country. I called the officer who had left the voicemail. He confirmed that the children were safe. My neighbor stayed with them until police arrived, and Child Protective Services became involved after no legal guardian could initially be reached. My parents eventually appeared at the station, furious not at Brooke, but at me. My mother insisted there had been a misunderstanding. My father said I created the crisis by leaving after being warned that the children needed me. Then the officer asked where Brooke was. My parents claimed she was attending a mandatory conference in Boston, but Brooke had never mentioned it until the night before my flight. I called her, but she sent me straight to voicemail. I texted, "Where are you? Police found Caleb and Sophie outside my house." She replied, "I told you I needed help. You chose a vacation. Don't act shocked that there are consequences." Tessa, who worked as an insurance investigator, told me to save everything. While waiting for our rental car, we downloaded the security footage, captured every message, and created a timeline. I forwarded the files to the officer and the assigned child welfare caseworker. My mother called moments later. "You need to come home," she said. "Your sister is under enormous pressure." She left 2 children outside an empty house. She believed you were still there. She watched me leave with my suitcase. My mother changed tactics. Caleb and Sophie are traumatized. Do you want them placed with strangers while you drive around Iceland? That sentence was designed precisely. For years, my parents had transformed Brooke's failures into tests of my character. Whenever I refused to rescue her, the conversation became a judgment of how loving I was. This time, however, the children were safe with my parents and professionals were involved. Returning would not erase the abandonment. It would only teach Brooke that creating a larger emergency guaranteed a larger rescue. I'm not coming home early, I said. I will cooperate with the investigation, but I will not take responsibility for Brooke's decision. My father shouted that I was destroying the family. I ended the call. The next morning, the caseworker contacted me with information that changed everything. She had spoken to Brooke's employer. There was no conference in Boston. Brooke had been fired 11 days earlier, and no one knew where she had gone. The caseworker, Angela Ruiz, asked whether Brooke had a history of disappearing, leaving the children without notice or misusing money intended for them. I wanted to protect my sister, but then I remembered Caleb wrapping a blanket around Sophie and answered honestly. Brooke had always created emergencies that looked accidental. As teenagers, she borrowed my car and returned it empty, then cried because her boyfriend had left her. In college, she used my emergency credit card for a weekend trip and claimed the charges were fraudulent. After Caleb was born, she regularly asked me to babysit for 1 hour and return the next morning. Each incident was treated as a separate mistake, never a pattern. 3 months before my Iceland trip, Brooke announced that the recreation club where she worked had promoted her to senior events manager. She posted photographs of charity auctions and expensive dinners, presenting herself as an exhausted single mother with a glamorous career. She also claimed her former husband, Marcus Hale, had stopped paying child support. When she said the children's after-school program was threatening to remove them, I transferred her $1,200. She promised to repay me within a month. Angela asked for proof, and I sent the bank record along with Brooke's message. You saved the kids from losing the only stable routine they have. The wording now felt calculated. Tessa and I reviewed the porch footage again. The driver of the SUV never stepped out, but his hand was visible on the steering wheel, wearing a large silver watch. I recognized it from photographs Brooke had deleted. It belonged to Gavin Mercer, a married club member who owned several car dealerships in Massachusetts. Brooke had introduced him at a charity event as a donor who supported working mothers. After that, she mentioned him constantly while insisting he was only a professional contact. The truth unfolded quickly. Brooke had been fired after money disappeared from a winter clothing fundraiser. She claimed a vendor invoice had been duplicated, but an internal review showed that several payments were redirected to a digital account registered with her personal email address. More than $9,000 was missing. Her supposed Boston conference was actually a 4-night resort stay in the Berkshires with Gavin. She planned to leave the children with me without consent because hiring an overnight sitter cost money she no longer had. My trip disrupted her plan, so she turned my refusal into a moral failure. When I confronted my mother, she said I did not know the whole story. Her employer confirmed she was fired, I replied. People lose jobs, my mother said. That doesn't make them monsters. She abandoned her children. She panicked because you refused to help. There it was again. Brooke's actions were excused as pressure, while mine were judged as choices. I asked whether she had watched Caleb trying to keep Sophie warm. My mother started crying and accused me of using the children to punish the family. Brooke used them, I said. I documented it. My father joined the call and ordered me to stop speaking with the caseworker. He said respectable families solved problems privately. His words unlocked a memory I had minimized for years. When I was 26, Brooke opened a utility account using my address after her electricity was disconnected. I discovered it through a collection notice. My father paid the balance on the condition that I never mention it again because a public record might damage Brooke's future. No one cared what the false account did to my credit. How many times have you paid to make her problems disappear? I asked. That is none of your business, he answered before hanging up. That evening, I searched old messages and found transfers totaling nearly $6,000 over 4 years. Some were labeled rent, dental work, or school expenses. I also found a fundraiser Brooke created after claiming Caleb needed specialized therapy not covered by insurance. The page raised more than $4,000. I called Marcus, whom Brooke had always described as unreliable. He sounded horrified. Caleb received therapy through his school at no cost. Brooke had told Marcus the fundraiser was for classroom equipment. Neither explanation was true. Marcus also confirmed that he had paid child support consistently through the state system. Worse, Brooke had asked him to surrender 2 weekends with the children because of her alleged conference. When he offered to keep them, she refused and said the children were attending a family program with her. She did not leave them at my house because nobody else was available. She left them because giving them to their father would expose her lie. Brooke returned to Providence 2 days later and told Angela she had suffered a panic attack. When shown the footage and messages, she changed her story and accused me of misleading her. The more she spoke, the more contradictions appeared. Angela informed her that the children would remain under temporary supervision. Brooke called me from my mother's phone that night. Her first words were, "Do you understand what you've done to me?" "I understand what you did when you thought I would clean it up." She lowered her voice. "Come home and tell them it was a misunderstanding. You can fix this." That request revealed how she had always viewed me. I was not her sister. I was the person assigned to absorb the impact of her decisions. "No," I said. "This time, the truth stays visible." Brooke spent the next 2 days rewriting the story online. She claimed a jealous relative had exploited a minor childcare misunderstanding during her mental health crisis. She never used my name, but everyone knew I had gone to Iceland. Relatives messaged me asking why I refused to help a struggling single mother. One cousin wrote, "Vacations can be rescheduled. Children remember abandonment forever." I did not respond publicly. Tessa reminded me that emotional reactions would only create more material for Brooke. Instead, I saved every post and sent anything relevant to Angela. My silence frustrated Brooke. She began posting about career-obsessed women without children and the danger of choosing independence over compassion. My mother shared one of the posts. For years, I believed my parents were simply overwhelmed by Brooke, but distance helped me see that they actively maintained the system because it protected their image. Brooke created chaos. My parents renamed it hardship, and I repaired the damage. Refusing my role threatened all 3 of them. On the 3rd morning, Tessa and I drove along Iceland's southern coast. For several hours, I allowed myself to experience the life I had worked for. Standing beneath a waterfall did not solve my family's problems, but it reminded me that my life existed beyond them. During lunch, Marcus sent me screenshots from an old group chat Brooke had accidentally included him in. One message read, "Megan always sends money when I mention the kids. She has a guilt reflex." Another said, "I just need enough to cover the hotel deposit before Gavin notices my card is maxed." The date matched the week she claimed Sophie needed emergency dental work. Brooke had studied my concern for the children and turned it into a payment system. Marcus sent another message where Brooke complained that I was wasting thousands on frozen rocks and wrote that leaving the children at my house would snap her out of this independence phase. A friend asked, "What if she actually gets on the plane?" Brooke replied, "Mom will make her come back." My mother's call, my father's lecture, and Brooke's arrival at my home had been coordinated pressure. They expected my guilt to solve everything before anyone examined the danger. I sent the messages to Angela. Because they proved Brooke knew I was traveling, the temporary safety plan remained in place. Then a former co-worker named Kendra Walsh contacted me. She had helped organize the missing winter clothing fundraiser and said Brooke pressured junior staff to approve payments quickly. When the money disappeared, Brooke blamed Kendra for accounting mistakes. Kendra had emails showing Brooke personally changed the payment details, along with photographs from a private Newport party where Brooke and Gavin celebrated on the same day money was withdrawn. Brooke had built her defense by distributing blame among people who trusted her. Kendra also possessed a form listing my mother as financial guarantor for a vendor account worth nearly $7,000. Diane had signed it 2 weeks after Brooke was fired. When I confronted my mother, she denied it until I described the document. Then she admitted Brooke had promised a promotion bonus would repay everything. There was no promotion and no bonus. "Your father cannot find out," she whispered. "He will find out," I said. "You need legal advice." "You would expose your own mother?" "Brooke exposed you when she used your signature to protect herself." The truth reached my father that evening when the club's attorney contacted them. He discovered that my mother had secretly withdrawn money from their joint savings to cover Brooke's rent, debts, and legal consultation. Over 18 months, my parents had given her almost $24,000. Their marriage erupted. My father called and demanded every document I had. I refused. "Get your own attorney. I'm not managing this for you." He called me ungrateful. I reminded him that gratitude did not require me to become the family's unpaid investigator. The club soon issued a public statement confirming Brooke no longer worked there and that financial discrepancies were under review. Her online story began collapsing. Gavin disappeared after his wife hired an attorney, and the luxury trip Brooke sacrificed everything to take lasted less than 48 hours. She called me crying. "You have to tell people to stop." "I haven't told people anything." "You sent them evidence?" "I sent evidence to the caseworker. I'm going to lose my children." "Then stop posting, stop lying, and cooperate." Brooke accused me of enjoying her collapse. I was not happy. I was furious and ashamed that I had ignored the pattern for so long. But I no longer needed her agreement before trusting my judgment. "I'm not happy," I said. "I'm finished protecting you from consequences." On the 5th day of the trip, my neighbor told me the police had collected the envelope Brooke left beneath my doormat. Inside were temporary medical authorization forms for Caleb and Sophie, a handwritten schedule, and $40. The documents listed me as their caregiver, but the signature at the bottom was not mine. Brooke had forged it. The schedule showed she expected me to keep the children for 4 nights. It included school information, allergies, and a reminder that Sophie needed an inhaler. At the bottom, Brooke had written, "Mom can help Sunday afternoon if Megan starts complaining." That sentence removed every remaining doubt. She knew I had not agreed. She had prepared for my resistance, not my consent. The officer added the forged documents to the investigation and asked for examples of my real signature. I also gave him the old utility account records Brooke had created using my address. What my father dismissed as a youthful mistake now looked like part of a larger pattern. Tessa asked whether I wanted to fly home. For the first time, I seriously considered it, but Angela confirmed that the children were safe, and Marcus was completing an expedited review to become their temporary primary caregiver. He lived nearby, had suitable housing, and consistently exercised his parenting time. That was the responsible outcome, even though Brooke had spent years portraying him as unreliable. She rejected support that required accountability and pursued help she could control. During a video call, Caleb asked whether I knew they were coming to my house. "No," I said. "I was already traveling. None of this was your fault." He looked down and said his mother told him I had promised to open the door. Sophie asked why I did not come home after police called. I wanted to promise I would always rescue them, but that promise would have continued the same unhealthy system. Because safe adults were with you, and the people helping your family needed to understand what happened, I explained. I love you, but loving you does not mean pretending your mom made a safe choice. Caleb said Grandma believed families forgave mistakes. Families can forgive, I answered. They also tell the truth and make sure dangerous mistakes are not repeated. After the call, I cried in the rental car. Boundaries did not remove pain. They simply prevented pain from controlling every decision. During the remaining days of our trip, I wrote a clear plan for my return. I would not give Brooke money directly, provide surprise overnight childcare, or allow her access to my house. Any help for the children would go through Marcus, their school, a medical provider, or another verified service. If Brooke attempted to leave them again, I would call the authorities instead of negotiating. I reviewed my finances and discovered that the money I had given Brooke over the years exceeded the cost of Iceland. I had treated my dream as an extravagance, requiring 3 years of sacrifice, while treating her crises as automatic expenses. My father called before our return flight. His anger had faded into exhaustion. He admitted Brooke had lied about several debts and asked why I had not warned him. I did, I said. You told me respectable families handled problems privately. He was silent. I told you about the utility account, the money, and the surprise childcare. Every time, you said I was judging her. He finally admitted, I don't know how to fix this. You don't, I replied. You stop hiding it and let Brooke do the work. Before boarding, I learned that Caleb and Sophie had been temporarily placed with Marcus. Brooke retained supervised visitation but could not take them elsewhere. Her final message read, I hope Iceland was worth destroying my life. I answered once, Iceland did not destroy your life. It only prevented me from hiding what you did. When I returned to Providence, my townhouse looked ordinary except for a strip of police tape beneath the porch railing. I stood where Caleb and Sophie had waited and imagined what might have happened if my neighbor had been away or the weather colder. Inside, the spare room looked exactly as I left it. My family often called it the kids' room because they stayed there so frequently, but I had never named it that. It was my guest room. Language had gradually converted occasional help into permanent obligation. Brooke arrived the following afternoon without warning. I spoke through the security camera instead of opening the door. We need to talk like sisters, she said. We can talk here. She accused me of humiliating her. The club had referred the missing funds to law enforcement. Gavin had blocked her. Her landlord had issued a notice for unpaid rent. Her car payments were behind, and several friends who donated to the false therapy fundraiser had stopped speaking to her. Marcus had temporary custody, and our mother would no longer give her money because my father separated their accounts. Brooke described every consequence as something another person had done to her. She never mentioned changing payment information, forging my signature, or abandoning her children. What do you want from me? I asked. Tell the caseworker I'm a good mother. Was leaving them outside good parenting? I thought you would come back. You knew I was on the plane. I thought Mom would stop you. It was the closest she came to admitting the plan, and my camera recorded it. I explained my boundaries. No direct loans, no surprise childcare, no access to my home, no use of my name or signature, and no assistance outside documented arrangements. Brooke laughed and said I sounded like a corporation. Because informal promises are what you exploit. She cried and asked whether I cared if she became homeless. I offered contact information for a temporary housing counselor. She slapped the paper away. Brooke did not want resources. She wanted me to remove the consequences of rejecting them. Our parents arrived 10 minutes later because Brooke had called them. My mother asked me to let Brooke stay in my guest room for a few nights. No, I answered. Diane looked stunned. She has nowhere else. She has options. She can contact the counselor, stay with a friend, or enter the temporary housing program. That program has rules, Brooke snapped. Exactly. For once, my father did not order me to comply. He told Brooke to contact the counselor. My mother accused him of abandoning their daughter. We paid, lied, and covered for her. He said, look where it brought us. Brooke screamed that everyone had chosen me, then made the mistake that finally broke my mother's denial. You promised Megan would cancel, she shouted. You said she always gives in. My mother stared at her. You told me the children were with a sitter that morning. Until then, Diane believed Brooke had acted impulsively after childcare collapsed. Brooke had lied to her as well. You used us, my mother whispered. Brooke blamed panic and said Gavin threatened to leave without her. My father asked whether the entire emergency had been created for a weekend with a married man. Brooke walked away and spent the night at a motel paid for with the final amount my mother agreed to give her. The next morning, she entered a temporary housing program requiring employment applications, financial counseling, and accountability meetings. Over the following 3 months, Brooke accepted a repayment agreement with the recreation club and faced formal fraud proceedings. The false fundraiser was closed, and donors received refunds where possible. The child welfare plan required parenting education, psychological evaluation, counseling, stable housing, and verified employment before she could regain unsupervised custody. Marcus remained the children's primary caregiver. At first, Brooke treated every requirement as an insult. After missing an appointment and arriving late to visits, she was warned that non-compliance would delay reunification. She finally began attending consistently and found part-time work managing warehouse inventory. It was less glamorous than her old job, but every transaction was documented. My parents also paid a price. My father postponed retirement to rebuild their savings, while my mother began counseling after recognizing how often she confused rescuing Brooke with loving her. I refused to mediate their marriage. I continued seeing Caleb and Sophie through Marcus and paid providers directly for classes and school activities. 3 months after the porch incident, Brooke admitted during a supervised meeting, "I left them because I thought you would fix it. I knew you were traveling, but I believed Mom and Dad could force you back." It was not a complete apology, but it was finally the truth. "I hope you understand why I won't be that person anymore," I said. She nodded. Whether she truly understood mattered less than whether her behavior changed. 6 months after Iceland, I returned to the historic theater my team had restored. The building had once been scheduled for demolition, but we stabilized the roof, removed damaged material, and rebuilt what could be saved. During the reopening performance, I stood in the balcony and thought about the difference between restoration and concealment. Real restoration does not paint over cracks and call a structure safe. It exposes the damage and rebuilds proper support. My family had spent years painting over cracks. Brooke eventually moved into a small apartment near Marcus. After completing required programs and maintaining employment, she progressed from supervised visits to longer daytime visits. She sold expensive accessories, surrendered her leased SUV, and used much of her income to repay debts. Her life became smaller, less polished, and more honest. She did not lose everything, nor should she have. The goal was not to erase her life, but to stop her from transferring the cost of every decision to other people. For years, she avoided growth because somebody always paid the bill, watched the children, kept the secret, or accepted the blame. Once those protections disappeared, she had to develop skills sympathy could never give her. Our relationship remained limited. Brooke occasionally tested my boundaries. Once, she requested $300 for an overdue electricity bill. I offered to review the bill and pay the provider directly if the children were staying with her. She withdrew the request. Another time, she asked me to watch the children for a weekend, but refused to provide details about the training program she claimed to be attending. I declined. Marcus later discovered there was no program. Those moments taught me that change is rarely a single dramatic realization. People who benefit from weak boundaries continue searching for openings. A boundary becomes meaningful only when it survives guilt, tears, accusations, and temporary improvement. My father eventually apologized for blaming me. He admitted that he used "family comes first" to end difficult conversations instead of examining whether the family was acting fairly. My mother said she feared that holding Brooke accountable would push her away. I told her that protecting Brooke had pushed me away instead. We began meeting occasionally for breakfast without discussing Brooke's emergencies. When my mother tried to pull me into solving one, I stopped her. Over time, she learned to ask Brooke, "What are you going to do about it?" That question was more useful than any check she had written. Caleb and Sophie adjusted to living primarily with Marcus. They attended counseling and slowly stopped fearing that every adult departure was permanent. Caleb once told me he kept knocking because his mother said I would eventually open the door. I apologized that he had been placed in that situation, but I did not apologize for taking the trip. Those truths could exist together. I regretted his fear, but I did not regret refusing to reward the choice that caused it. A year later, I placed a photograph from Iceland in my hallway. It showed Tessa and me standing near a black sand beach with our jackets pulled tight against the wind. It was not proof that I chose a vacation over children. It was proof that I stopped allowing manufactured emergencies to control my life. The trip also represented every ordinary promise I had broken to myself. I had canceled dates, abandoned hobbies, and delayed opportunities because my family treated my availability as communal property. Boarding that plane did not make me selfish. It was the first time I recognized that my future deserved protection too. The lesson was not that family should be abandoned when life becomes difficult. Healthy families help one another during genuine emergencies. They provide meals after surgery, collect children when plans collapse, and offer money when circumstances are beyond someone's control. But help becomes harmful when it repeatedly protects a capable adult from predictable consequences. Compassion without boundaries can finance dishonesty, deepen dependency, and place innocent people at risk. Real love asks difficult questions. Is this assistance solving a temporary problem or maintaining a permanent pattern? Is the person requesting help honest? Are children being protected or used as emotional leverage? Does the support encourage responsibility or allow someone to avoid it? Why is the same person always expected to sacrifice? Some of the most valuable education comes from understanding manipulation, financial abuse, and the way guilt can override judgment. Emotional education teaches us that saying no is not abandonment. Financial education teaches us to verify requests, document loans, and protect our identities. Healthy relationship education teaches us that trust requires accountability. I did not expose Brooke because I wanted revenge. I stopped protecting her because secrecy had become dangerous. The consequences came from choices she had already made: abandoning her children, forging my signature, misusing donations, deceiving her employer, and lying to everyone who tried to help. My refusal merely prevented those consequences from being redirected toward me. Had I canceled the trip, I probably would have opened the door, taken the children inside, and believed another conference story. Brooke would have returned days later with excuses. My parents would have praised me for being dependable, and the missing money might have remained hidden until another crisis arrived. Keeping the peace would not have protected the family. It would have preserved the system that endangered it. Today, I still love my sister, but love no longer requires access to my home, bank account, or schedule. I love my parents, but I no longer accept responsibility for maintaining the image they want others to see. I love Caleb and Sophie enough to support structures that keep them safe, even when those structures make adults uncomfortable. Most importantly, I learned to treat my own life as something worthy of care. 3 years of saving bought me a flight to Iceland. Saying no gave me something more valuable: the knowledge that I could survive my family's disappointment without surrendering my future. When someone says family must always come first, ask what they mean. Do they mean mutual care, honesty, and shared responsibility? Or do they mean that one reliable person must always come last? Family love should never require one person to disappear so everyone else can avoid changing. Sometimes the most loving decision is to step back, leave the truth visible, and allow consequences to teach the lesson that rescuing never could.
Thank you for staying with this emotional journey from beginning to end. Everything in this video is fictional and intended only for entertainment, reflection, and educational storytelling. We hope it reminds you that when people treat your loyalty like something guaranteed, your decision to step back can become the moment they finally understand what they took for granted. But by then, your peace may already matter more than their regrets.